I'm Alex Honnold. Today I will be answering your questions from the internet. This is Climbing Support. At KittyWillow12 asks, at the risk of sounding stupid, what's the difference between rock climbing and bouldering? And that's not stupid, don't worry, Kitty Willow. Basically, bouldering is just a type of rock climbing. Rock climbing is kind of the more inclusive term for all things climbing. Bouldering is the more specific version where you're not using rope, you're not using equipment, and you're climbing kind of smaller things like boulders. At KTrail35 asks, why don't free climbers wear parachutes? Most cliffs are actually less than vertical, so if you were wearing a parachute, it wouldn't help you anyway because you bounced down the cliff. A few people have climbed things with parachutes, and you can fall off of very specific cliffs in the world with a parachute, and it could conceivably be safer. But for the most part, if you fall off a cliff, you're going to bounce down the wall. All right, here's a question from at Laura J. Wilkinson. Do rock climbers still follow the, quote, maintain 3 points of contact, end quote, rule? So what she's referencing is 3 points of contact is how you stay controlled on the wall. In situations that are dangerous, yeah, you should probably maintain 3 points of contact. Now we're kind of all about no points of contact, like people jumping from hold to hold and swinging and doing all kinds of athletic gymnastic movement. And that's cool and that's super fun. But if you're climbing in the mountains and you're looking at serious consequences if you fall off, like, yeah, you should probably maintain 3 points of contact and move very deliberately and carefully. The Reefer Brigade asks, what's the biggest climbing mistake you or your partner has made? What do you learn from it? It's like, there's so many mistakes. Like, what comes to mind is like a friend and I were once climbing all cap wall style, like, so camping on the wall, and he flipped over the haul bag to look at something. He thought it was closed, but it wasn't. So basically he like poured our food in our stove, just dumped them off the wall. We still had a couple days to go and we're sort of like, now we have no food, no stove. We're sort of like, that sucks. That just came to mind because I was just on a wall the other day and I was joking about that story because it's like, let's make sure we don't drop the food off the wall. The lesson from that was that you have to clearly communicate with your partners. Big Time Maka asks, what slang do rock climbers use? I bet it's like, okay lads, let's dust up our thingies and grip some cliff. I've never said that, well now I have, but no, there's tons of jargon. All the holds have specific ways of referring like what you grab, like undercling, side pulls, gastones, like different types of things, the way you grip them. It's a whole vocabulary, which I won't go into because it's extensive. But I think that's true for any activity. If you get really deep into a thing, there's all kinds of specific words to relate to the thing that you're doing. At PlunkR19 asks, do rock climbers spray shit on their hands for better grip? That is probably the key. Oh, I thought he meant actual poop, and I was like, no. Climbers use chalk on their hands all the time. It helps dry your skin so you get better grip. Lick your fingers to like moisten a little, and then chalk, and then grab. I mean, there's a whole thing around moisture and dryness and whatever. Basically, people just use chalk, like dry powder chalk, the same as a gymnast. Dr. Pablo Pistola asks, got a pesky cut on my thumb. Guitar teacher suggests I use super glue. What do rock climbers use? Yeah, rock climbers use super glue a fair amount. I mean, if you're climbing and you cut yourself, depending if you're on a rope, you can just hang there, and if you have tape with you, you can tape it up, you can deal with it. Often you don't have anything with you, so then you just finish the climb with one finger bleeding. I climbed something last year that was really sharp, and my partner and I was climbing with the rope, it was all safe, but we didn't have any tape with us, and so I split one tip, which is like when you cut your fingertip, and then I split another one. And then I was trying to climb on my back 3 fingers because my first fingers were bleeding. And then I split both my middle fingers, and then I was trying to climb on my back 2. And then I basically just had to call it and give up, and we cheated our way past and carried on to the top. But I basically had my front 4 fingertips bleeding, and it's kind of like, I definitely should have brought tape. I was like, what an idiot. But you know, live and learn. Desperate Craft 8656 asks, any advice on how to stop being as nervous before or during a climb outdoors? I like that their user image thing is this really muscular, looks like Sylvester Stallone or something. It's like, wow, it's like so strong. I mean, I think the best way to overcome that kind of fear is to just slowly build up so that you feel comfortable. If you're scared climbing outside because you think your rope's gonna break or something, just climb a couple feet off the ground and then sit on the rope and bounce on the rope and like basically learn to trust the equipment and then systematically take on bigger challenges. Because your first time climbing outside, you might be scared just a few feet off the ground. That's fine. Just get comfortable there and then go a couple feet higher. I think the only way to really overcome that sort of fear is to slowly build up and establish a solid foundation. At Beat Officer asks, how many of you climb in a state of quote-unquote flow? They were reading this article, and they have a link. How often are you able to reach this state? For me, flow is why rock climbing is perfection. How about others? I basically climb, 5 days a week for the last 30 years. So I climb all the friggin' time. And I would say I climb in a state of quote unquote flow every once in a while. To tap into something special, to me, requires climbing that has consequences, climbing that matters a lot to me, climbing that's, challenging in the right way, climbing that's different. I suspect that actually not that many people climb in a state of flow that often. But I agree though that is the beauty of climbing, is that it does allow you to access those kind of states from time to time. At Throwaway and Ting, as we all know, climbing is a mental strength test as well as physical. How do you improve the mental side of climbing? So when they're climbing a hard problem, they have a tendency to give up or not commit or not push themselves to their complete limit. I really want to be able to push myself as hard as possible. Any tips? A lot of people sort of lie to themselves like, no, I tried my hardest. But when you're watching, you're like, no, obviously you didn't try your hardest. You tried much harder. You just gave up because you got scared or whatever else. At least if you know that you're giving up prematurely, that's the important first step. And I think training the mental side is really just like training the physical side. It's something you have to practice trying your very hardest. It's like, I'm going to give 100% max effort, just like, you kind of have to identify what's holding you back and then work on it. At Unity Follow Hub asks, real talk climbers, what's the scariest moment you've had while climbing? Maybe it was a sketchy hold, a surprise storm, or a wild swing on lead. Share your story. Who's got the most epic tale? How many stories do we want about that time I thought I was going to die? I've like broken holds while soloing and had both footholds break off this thing, and I wound up just dangling by my hands like while down soloing this tower in Africa. It was like, whoa. It was like, felt like Mission Impossible, it's insane. I've been in a lot of scary situations with a rope where you're like, oh, I can't find good protection. This seems kind of scary. Like the rock quality seems bad, whatever. But you keep pushing because you have a rope on, you have gear. You're like, surely the protection will get better eventually. You're like, surely if I get higher, I'll be able to find an anchor eventually. And you keep pushing and you keep pushing for sometimes, an hour, like into the unknown. It's like getting scarier and scarier. And you're like, but it can't get worse than this. And then you keep going and you're like, but now it started to rain. You're like, it's getting worse. Here's a question from McDreads. I'm just going to summarize this question, but it says that they're basically looking for extra exercises to do in addition to climbing. Currently, they're hangboarding once a week, pinching weights, while he lists an extensive workout routine. I think the main thing is that he probably just needs to climb more. All the other workout stuff is all supplemental or sort of in addition, like if you have the time. But if you want to be good at climbing, you have to climb. May the Lord Open 26. Oh, may the Lord open. May the Lord open 26 asks, what's in your climbing bag? Do you even use a bag? If not, I see some people coming with just shoes and a chalk bag. For my climbing bag, which is like to go climb outside, I always think shoes, harness, chalk bag. It's basically like, do I have my three things, my shoes, harness, chalk bag? And then you check to make sure you have your rope and your gear and whatever else you need for that specific day, like food and water. If I'm going to the climbing gym, I often just carry my shoes and my chalk bag in my hand and just walk in and take off my street shoes, put my phone in my shoe, and then just, climb. But a lot of people bring a little skin kit, they bring water bottle and a snack and things like that. Conscious Pause 964 asks, why are climbing shoes so weirdly shaped? Climbing shoes in general are asymmetrical and downturned, so they're hooked like a talon and they focus all of your weight onto your big toe. So it does feel like a weird shape because the whole thing is to force your foot into a little hook shape. Because you're trying to stand on things sometimes that are the width of a quarter with just the tip of your big toe. And you're like, it's pretty small, it's like you really want to focus as much as possible onto one little point. At Dino S'more asks, what was your climbing progression / timeline like? How quickly did you progress from V1 to 2 and then 2 to 3? What grades do you start plateau? When do you start seriously training? If you're starting as an adult, expect to progress more slowly in a way, partially just because your connective tissue, your tendons and ligaments in your hands and fingers just won't be strong enough for your mass. Whereas like if you're a kid, it's just easier to grow into it quickly. But I just think you shouldn't be caught up on your climbing progression. It's like you're not going to get a medal for getting to a certain grade. Do your best, have fun, have a good time with your friends, and see where you get. At Larry Handy 007 asks, at Alex Honnold, do you carry your cell phone when you climb? Yes, I mostly do. Typically I just have my phone in my pocket, and if I'm not soloing by myself in the middle of nowhere, I often listen to music on my phone while I cruise around. Then if something's really serious climbing, then often I'll take it out of my pocket so it doesn't restrict mobility, and so you're not distracted and whatever else. Indekusu asks, WTF is a carabiner? Here is a carabiner. It has a little gate, you open it, it clicks, it's amazing. It allows you to connect things together. It's a piece of metal that you can secure to protection in the rock, and then you can clip your rope into it. Okay, here's a question from the Brain J. Assuming there are no bolts or preset anchors on the mountain, how would a climber rappel down? Do they set an anchor, rappel down, and leave the anchor there? Is there a way to set a retrievable rappel anchor? Basically, they're asking if there isn't already an anchor in place, what do you do to rappel off of something? Climbers almost always leave a fixed rappel anchor behind. So if there isn't something there before, because you've, say, done a first ascent, no one's ever been there before, then you build something and you leave it behind, and then other climbers will use that in the future. If your anchor is built such that you can flick the rope and it'll fall back down, you're kind of like, does that sound not secure? It's like basically retrievable anchors are just not that secure. And so climbers in general prefer to build solid anchors and just leave them behind for other people to use. Somebody on Quora asks, why in the years since Alex Honnold free-soloed El Cap has nobody else even attempted to do so? I think because it's hard. I mean, it took me a very long time personally to build up to free-soloing El Cap, and I had to do a bunch of other things to kind of get there. And so far, nobody else has even really taken any of those first steps. Like nobody's tried any of those other routes or sort of started the process of learning how to do it. That's not to say that somebody won't at some point. And I have started to hear some rumors of like certain kids and certain people that probably have the talent and the disposition and, maybe we'll be able to at some point. There are a lot of people who might have the potential to go down that path, but then they might have one really scary experience where they're like, you know what, this isn't for me, and they just focus on other aspects of climbing. Or they might die in the mountains in an avalanche, which has happened to a lot of up-and-coming soloists and things like that. This is a question from Exotic Eyes 1536. They asked how helpful drones can be for route finding, especially in more vertical terrain. Does anyone have any experience using their drone? If so, what are their thoughts? I've been on a bunch of trips actually where people have used drones to help navigate. So navigating glaciers, let's say, or navigating through really dense jungle. Occasionally you can punch a drone up through canopy and kind of get a sense of where you are in a landscape. In general, I don't think people ever use drones for specific rock climbing objectives, like choosing where your holds are, basically because the resolution isn't that fine. I think drones can be incredibly helpful for navigating crevasse fields and things on glaciers. I mean, I actually don't know how to fly a drone, but teams that I've been with have used drones. All right, so here's a question from a deleted user. I'm new to climbing. I don't understand how the grading system works. Could someone explain it to me? Climbing grading is basically a subjective scale determined by just how hard it is to climb something. And it might have to do with how tiring it is, how small the holds are, how physically demanding, like how much it requires of your muscles to get up a climb. And then the other thing is that rock changes all the time. Holds break. Sometimes that makes things easier. Sometimes that makes things harder. A climbing grade is always kind of an open-ended conversation. Like if enough people do it and say that it's harder than that or easier than that, then the grade changes. And that's why climbing grades can feel almost silly sometimes, because if you're particularly good at one style and particularly bad at another style, the grades can feel all over the place. And there aren't that many people who are well-rounded enough at everything to make the grades feel correct. It's taken me a long time, but I actually do feel like I'm now kind of good enough at most styles that I'm kind of like, like it does actually feel like the appropriate grade, but it took freaking years to get there. Vanilla Doctor asks, anyone here 35 plus, what are your thoughts, observations, advice in regards to climbing, training as you age? I hate to think that 35 plus is considered aged as a climber. I am now 40, and so the only real thing is as you age, you just need to take more rest days from time to time. As a 20-year-old, you can climb 30 days on and just recover overnight. As a 40-year-old, you need to rest a little bit more. It hasn't been that crazy yet, but I'm sure by 50 you have to rest quite a bit more. At Just 2025 Jim asks, how important is your weight? Do you not gain a few pounds now and then? Would you postpone a climb if your weight increased by, say, 5 pounds? Yeah, no, that's a fair question. I mean, strength to weight is obviously a very important part of climbing. It's not just weight that matters, it's strength to weight. And so if you gain some weight, but you feel much stronger, that's probably weight that you want to carry. I've been sort of grappling personally with like, do I want to be this heavy? But I'm also like, but I like being this strong. And so you're kind of like, ultimately it just comes down to your own performance as a climber. Like, do you feel strong doing the thing? At Cowan McGarry asks, would you ever consider mountain climbing? I was like, do I not mountain climb? Come on. Do you think that would be too hard or just not enjoyable, and do you want to stay with rock climbing? I think that at Cowan McGarry is maybe drawing too much of a distinction between rock climbing and mountain climbing. I would say I do a lot of mountain climbing. I mean, honestly, in the last week, I've climbed 2 big snowy mountains, like in storms, just hiking up a peak. Maybe he means like high altitude mountaineering, like climbing Mount Everest and things like that. And that I probably will never do in my life, just because it's, I think, too big of a trade-off, like too much time to go on trips like that. Too much time away from family, too much time not rock climbing. But no, I definitely climb mountains all the time. I mean, that's part of rock climbing, is going to the mountains and climbing things. Jazzatra asks, do I ever listen to music when I climb? If you do, what's your favorite music to listen to? Back in the day, I used to climb with the overhead headphones, like little earbud things, and I would do 1 ear in, 1 ear out, because if you're soloing, like you need to be able to hear if like the rock is moving or if something shifts or if you hear sand and things like falling in a crack. Now I just play the speaker off my phone, because that way I can hear everything around me but still listen to music, which is basically all rock. Which is fitting because I'm rock climbing. At Rye Lone Roth, I have a question. How do rock climbers get that rope all the way to the top? Wouldn't that mean they already climbed the rock? I think they're maybe missing some of the fundamentals of climbing, which is that typically you get the rope to the top by climbing to the top. You tie into your rope at the bottom, you climb up the wall, and as you climb, you put protection into the rock, you clip your rope into it, and then once you get to the top with the rope, then you bring up your partner. or vice versa. Your partner takes the rope up and brings you up. But somebody has to actually climb the rock, and that is the essence of rock climbing. At PK Performance asks, who's your climbing role model? For me, I've always looked up to Tommy Caldwell, who's now a good friend of mine as well. People like Peter Croft, also a hero of mine growing up, and then now a friend as an adult. I really like climbers who are lifers, basically people who have devoted their whole life to the craft and who are still doing it, still good at it, still love it. I'll certainly be climbing my whole life. I mean, I just love climbing. I love easy climbing. I love rambling around in the mountains. Like, I'll for sure do that my whole life. And new to this, Reddit Biz asks, what are some bucket list rock climbing destinations that you're familiar with and would recommend? Well, first and foremost, Yosemite Valley, the most beautiful place on earth. I mean, it's so incredible. I love Yosemite. It's so great. But I mean, I'd say most climbing destinations are quite scenic. So many climbing areas are in national parks or in other beautiful public lands. I mean, for international places, Patagonia comes to mind. You know, there's a reason that it's a famous tourist destination. It is very, very beautiful. I mean, some of the best rock climbing in the world are on islands in Greece and things. Like, basically, they're all in these places that are incredibly beautiful to visit. So you're kind of like, you know, it's not the worst sport to get into. At Vermilion Orange asks, best place in the U.S. to live for access to great climbing. Just curious, looking to hear different opinions. Once they graduate college, they want to move out west, but I'm unsure which state, city. Let me know your perspective. So I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, which I think is the best four-season climbing in the country by far. I freaking love Las Vegas. The climbing is insane. I think it has the best access to hard climbing anywhere. I mean, there are a lot of other towns around the West that have good access to climbing. It really comes down to what your particular tastes are, what type of climbing you're looking for. But I prefer to rock climb all year, and so Vegas is way better for that. At Negan0 bunch of numbers. Do you have any other free solo projects that you're working on? Yeah, I'm always working on a few things, but you know, just keep your cards close to your chest and see how things play out. I always have at least a couple things sort of on the back burner in my home around Las Vegas, like in Red Rock and various places. But maybe this winter I might get into a couple of little ideas. At Mr. Jimson, ask bouldering apps. Question, what are the best bouldering apps? Do they serve different purposes? Curious what people use and why. I actually don't know any bouldering apps. Unless they mean bouldering apps as in board climbing apps, like the Kilter app, the Tension app, the Moonboard, all those types of things. Those are all incredibly useful, but they're terrible apps. I would say there's no good app for climbing right now. At JoeLane33 says, Mount Rainier is a place where very many Sasquatch encounters happen on the reg. Question, Alex, serious question. Have you ever experienced or heard of any strangeness in the middle of nowhere while out on a climbing trip, or any trip in general? I free soloed this wall in Zion in the winter, and most of the climbs in Zion, you climb about 1,000 feet, and then you rappel back down, but I was climbing without a rope, so I climbed 1,000 feet, and then I was going to scramble up to the rim of the canyon, which is about 2,000 feet higher, and then hike down the hiking trail. And because it was winter, there was snow all over the upper canyons, and nobody ever goes up there because climbers typically rappel. And so I basically just had to sort of piece my way up this 2,000-foot journey to the rim, and I didn't expect it to be that snowy, and I was sort of like, oh, wow. And so I suddenly got into sort of, I don't want to say a survival experience, but it all felt kind of extreme. I was like trudging around in the snow trying to find my way up to the rim, and I stumbled upon these bighorn tracks, and then I wound up following bighorn tracks all the way up to the rim. And I was like, this is how, you know, indigenous people have spirit animals and things like that, because I was like, in a different world, this would be me saying like, oh, and then the spirit guided me to safety. The natural explanation is just that, you know, obviously bighorns are up there doing their thing as well, and some lonely bighorn was also trying to find his way up to the rim, and I was just lucky enough that I found his tracks. He or she was very good at finding the correct way to the rim, and it all worked out perfectly for me. Anyway, yeah, so now I have a spirit animal. Okay, here's a question from Stoked Elephant. They're just getting into outdoor rock climbing, and they're amazed by one thing in particular that I was not expecting from the gym. The fear. Holy crap, it's scary. Knowing that within moments of climbing up a boulder, you might fall and really hurt yourself. It got me thinking about those climbers who have multi-day climbs up El Cap or other big climbs who sleep on the side of rock faces. Was it hard to fall asleep? I literally slept on a wall 2 nights ago. I was so psyched. Basically, like, climbing a cliff is really hard, and by the time you set up your little camp and sit down in your sleeping bag and cook some food, you're like, it feels so chill compared to actually climbing the cliff. And so typically the camping part is incredibly peaceful and you know, beautiful. I mean, you're in this incredible place and you're finally relaxed after a hard day of effort, and you know, you're eating warm food. It's like, no, I sleep like a baby, and it's amazing. All right, Citrus1330 asks, how much does natural grip strength affect climbing potential? That's an interesting question, because actually people who are insanely strong natural grip. I mean, yeah, obviously you have greater climbing potential. Sadly, I don't, but I've like worked hard at finger stuff my whole life. It's like hanging from a small edge. It's kind of like weightlifting, basically, where you just hang from an edge with your fingers and you can add weight to your body and load your fingers more and more. But the most useful thing is probably to climb as much as possible. Shao12 asks, I'll try to sit up straighter while I read this one. What causes climber posture? How can it be cured? It suggested that antagonist exercises like push-ups and bench press provide healthy balance, but don't the push-ups and bench press cause forward shoulders, making the problem worse? A lot of climbers wind up sort of hunchbacked and sort of like leaned, and it basically stems from imbalances in muscles between pulling and pushing muscles, and it's kind of complicated which muscles and why, and it's probably different for individuals. Big picture is that if you try to, well, one, think about your posture, and then two, try to keep your muscles relatively balanced by evenly pushing and pulling, then you shouldn't get any crazy imbalances. Okay, that's it. Those are all the questions. Until next time, and you can check out my podcast, Planet Visionaries.